Security is the biggest issue in the energy sector right now, and few countries know more about it than Norway, which is why we've come here to Bergen to ask experts from across the energy ecosystem how geopolitics has reshaped their attitude to security, and also how the imperatives of decarbonisation can still be factored into that equation. How does Europe balance energy security and decarbonisation?
I think one of the most interesting things happening now is that even though we're in the middle of political backlash for climate policies in many countries, the green transition is still on in Europe. And that's because it's become also a question of sovereignty. Without energy security, without control of your own energy supplies, you have a lot of dependencies in today's world.
What's the most important lesson you've learned about energy security following the war in Ukraine and the war in the Middle East?
The most important lesson we've learned is that, especially as a country as small as Norway, being a part of Europe, is that we need to collaborate more. We are very vulnerable in meeting an adversary as Russia. They do not play by the rule books in our rule-governed world that we took for granted. We see now that, for example, energy and heating is used as a weapon against civilians, and we see also that we're very vulnerable when these energy systems are knocked out, because our whole base for society is on a structured energy system. So I think one of the most important lessons is we need to be more decentralized, as we're lucky enough to actually have a basis for it here in Western Norway. And I've learned also from Ukraine that you need to be able to repair very quickly, because the resilience of a whole community or society is based on your ability to turn the lights back on, basically.
What's the single most important lesson that you've learned about energy security in the aftermath of the war in Ukraine and the current war in the Middle East?
I think for our case it's that it takes a whole society to defend ourselves against the war, and that the total defense concept of Norway should be strengthened. We need to bring in more of the private companies, the volunteers, and we need to train it. We need to understand each other's roles better, create networks to share knowledge, to share threats and vulnerabilities, so that we together can work to close the gaps. It's not only the armed forces, it's not only the public sector, it's not only the private sector, it's the whole society together that builds resilience. So I think that's the single most important. We need to strengthen the cooperation we already have.
How does the increased emphasis on energy security affect the decisions that you might make about your future energy mix?
I think the most obvious question right now that these people are concerned about from where they can buy natural gas. Europe has earlier imported 20 and then 10% from Russia. We don't do that anymore, and now we're facing that because of the situation in Hormuz, Qatar isn't producing. So I assume that Norway, we are in Norway today, will have great business for the future. But are we sure that we can import from US long-term running? Yes, I'm sure they would like to sell to us, but under which trade conditions? And then we are talking about a very big part of our import. I think this is what concerns people most. Maybe we should also look at from where we are sourcing nuclear. Both the uranium for fuel, where we are changing the legislation so we can mine in Europe, and also which vendor that should build new nuclear plants. But for a moment, what people have in their mind, that is a guess.